What is up, my hungry gringos? So great to see you today. As always, I've got something a little bit different for this episode. We're going to be talking about the weird and unique things I noticed about the United States now that I'm living as an expat here in Bogota, Colombia. These are things that seemed normal when I lived in the United States, but now that I've got an outside perspective are kind of weird. It's going to involve doggy bags, disposable gloves, and guns. Seems like a shopping list for a serial killer now that I think about it. Number one, the size of the portions and the people. So this is something I noticed when I landed in the Houston airport in a recent trip to the United States. I was there with my wife, starving, hadn't eaten breakfast. We went to this place called Cora's Kitchen, which was very good, and we ordered a burger and a salad, and we thought, you know, we're starving, might as well order an appetizer, let's get some potato chips. So they bring out the potato chips, and these things were like enormous. This was enough potato chips for like 4 people, and it had a thing of dip in the middle. And of course I ate all of it because it was delicious and I have no shame, but it was really jarring after having been out of the country for the first time and that like being the first food that I encountered upon landing. And this is something I found myself saying over and over again when presented with a portion at a restaurant is, how could one human eat this amount of food? It is just an insane amount of food. So we finished our meals, ready for a nap, and another thing I noticed is the size of the people. I don't really know how to put this because I don't want to offend anybody, but man, it's really jarring how many obese people there are in the United States. Outside of the US, especially where I live in Bogota, there's just really not that many obese people. Like when you see someone that size, it's kind of jarring. And I see why, because the food portions are just huge.
Well, that's because you ain't got enough to eat in Colombia. Last time I checked, there wasn't one Golden Corral there.
Yeah, most people would say that, but you can't really chalk it up to how rich or poor a country is. Over 1/3 of the US is obese, and that's like 1 in every 3 people. That's pretty intense. France, which has no shortage of like amazing bad for you food, has a 15% obesity rate. And speaking of France, a French public health researcher actually did a really interesting study where he went to Philadelphia and Paris and he weighed the food in the 2 different cities, just both identical food, so French fries, pizza, burgers, whatever, and compared the weight of the different portions in those 2 cities. What he found was that in Philadelphia, the portion sizes were 25% bigger. And American restaurant food is like insane. You can check out my last video where I talk about how many calories are in certain things, but when you're in the States, it's like, yeah, this is just a normal size of food, but when you're out of the States, you're like, this is for like 5 people. And what's interesting about Colombia is like, they don't really have great diets here. Like you really don't see greens or a lot of vegetables besides potatoes on the plate. Like they like their fried food, they like their cheeseburgers, they just don't eat as much of it. What I'm trying to say is that maybe eating a giant deep fried onion at a fake Australian restaurant is kind of weird. Number 2, living outside of America is a giant pain in the ass. So I was in Chicago over Christmas, arriving in the airport with a full belly of blue cheese dip and chips from the Houston airport. And I'm at my sister-in-law's house, and the gracious host that she is, she asked me, what do you want to do here when you're in Chicago? Do I go to Lou Malnati's for deep dish? Do I stroll along Navy Pier? Do I check out the Art Institute's amazing collection of paintings, both modern and classic? No. I say, take me to Target. Sure, the Matisse display at the Art Institute is probably awesome, but nothing compares to the glory and splendor of Target. Now, until I left the US, I didn't really realize how awesome Target is. I'm guilty, I used to wax nostalgic of the days of mom and pop stores. And now that I live in a country full of mom and pop stores, I'll tell you this. Mom and pop stores are kind of like the horse-drawn carriage. Looking back, they seem kind of quaint and charming, but I'd rather have a Honda Accord because it doesn't poop in the middle of the street and goes faster than 15 miles an hour. See, what's amazing about Target is you can get so many different things in one place. And this is a big deal, Americans. It's a miracle of modern capitalism. I needed some chocolate, since it's cheaper in the US, a screwdriver, a CR2032 battery, a cast iron griddle, and some disposable gloves. And I got all that stuff in one place. Now, for all you lucky Americans wondering why this is such a big deal, let me tell you how that would play out in Bogota. So I go to the grocery store to get the chocolate, which is way more expensive than it is in the US. They only have AA and AAA batteries, so no dice on the batteries there. They don't have any disposable gloves, and they also don't sell tools, so no screwdriver. I pop by the 24-hour pharmacy chain to see if they have the battery, but they only have hearing aid batteries. So I head down to the electronics district because I know that if I'm going to find this battery, that's going to be the place to find it. After wandering through the electronics district for about 15 minutes, trying to find the one person that sells this specific battery, I finally find the stall. They've got one battery in stock. I wanted two, but hey, one is better than zero. I head to a random hardware store, pick up my screwdriver. I head to a restaurant supply store for the disposable gloves, but unfortunately they have nothing cast iron that can be seen. So I head to a Colombian Bed Bath & Home store, and I find the griddle that I need. However, it's $144 and only 44 bucks on Amazon. So I say, you know what? I'm gonna order this on Amazon, get free shipping with Amazon Prime, have it sent to my mom's house, and bring it back on the plane with me the next time I'm gonna visit the United States. I also realized that just order it on Amazon are 5 of the most beautiful words in the English language. Shopping at a big box store does have its downsides though. At one point I lost my wife in the store, which is usually an indication that something very expensive was about to happen. And I find her in the electronics section convinced that we absolutely needed a drone, and it's on discount. Thankfully, we didn't get the drone, but if we had stayed in the United States, it would only be 1 click away on Amazon. Still, I miss Target. I miss you so much. Number 3, the gun thing. Now, I can't make a list like this without mentioning the gun thing. America has one gun pretty much for every person, and a much higher rate of gun violence than the rest of the developed world.
Well, I'm sorry I enjoy my freedom, Chairman Mao.
See, this is the first thing that's weird about the gun thing. You bring up guns with anything short of heartfelt enthusiasm, people will pretend like you're trying to turn America into a tyrannical dictatorship. Now, I'm not trying to take a stance on guns here.
Good, because you can pry them from my cold dead hands.
All I'm saying is that in the US, you can kind of get used to the liberal gun laws and the constant stream of mass shootings in the news, and forget that compared to the rest of the world, this is like really, really weird. I live in Colombia, which really doesn't have the reputation for being the safest place in the world.
Listen, son, the probability of you getting shot in public is next to nothing.
Look, I know the chances of being involved in a mass shooting are very, very low. It's just a fear that like all of the developed world and a good swath of the less developed world just doesn't have to deal with on a daily basis. And I didn't realize that it's a really strange feeling to have, the existential threat of random gun violence. It's just a weird thing to have in like the back of your mind, you know? And yeah, I realize Colombia is a more violent country than the United States. I get that. But what's weird is that in Colombia, the violence happens in places where you would expect violence, which doesn't make it any better, okay? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you're in a place where you don't expect violence to happen, you can rest a little bit easier. If I'm at a shopping mall or a school, the idea of a shooting happening is not in the back of my mind. And a lot of people are afraid to visit me in Bogota because of how violent they think it is, but people aren't afraid to take a trip to Chicago for the most part, and they have a 40% higher homicide rate than Bogota, Colombia. Point is that living under the constant specter of potential random gun violence is pretty weird. But let's cheer things up a bit, shall we? Number 4, the diversity. So this is one of my favorite things about America, and this is coming from someone who was born in Miami, moved to Los Angeles, and then moved to Bogota, Colombia, so it's not really a universal sort of expat experience, but it's on my mind, so I gotta talk about it. I think diversity is hands down one of the coolest things about America. I didn't really notice this until I left, but walking through a lot of big American cities, you see faces of people from so many different backgrounds. In certain places, you could see signs in different languages, you hear different languages being spoken, all that good stuff. And I would be remiss as the Hungry Gringo if I didn't talk about how awesome this makes all the food, okay? Especially if you're living in a really big city. When I was in Los Angeles, I was right down the street from an amazing Armenian bakery, about 30 minutes or 2 hours depending on traffic, away from a awesome all-you-can-eat Korean barbecue place. I could get cheap but incredible al pastor tacos from a taco truck that's in the middle of a car wash parking lot. And if I didn't feel like going too far, I could just pop down to the local mall, get myself some soup dumplings from one of the greatest restaurant chains in the world. Speaking of greatest restaurant chains, I could get the best low-price burger in the world at In-N-Out. Argue about that statement in the comments section below, please. I know that diversity is important, but more importantly, God, it makes the food so delicious. Do you know what it's like to live in a city without good, cheap Mexican food? It is horrible. Wait, doesn't Bogota have good Mexican food? Oh, you mean the city that's farther from Mexico City than Illinois is? No. It doesn't have great Mexican food. And on the subject of diversity, another thing that makes America awesome is number 5, what being an American means. Look, I know it's not that unique to hear a bunch of languages being spoken in a major world city, except for Bogota, because if someone speaks English, I turn around immediately and desperately want to ask them to be friends with me. No hablo español, por favor. Necesito un amigo. But what is weird is you can see some completely different looking people from completely different backgrounds who could even speak English as a second language in their home, and they could sound super American and be as American as hot dogs and hamburgers. Two dishes that were created in a different country, by the way. What's cool about America is you can take on the American national identity no matter where you're from. And thankfully, literally everyone in America agrees, right? All right, so maybe we have a little ways to go in that regard, but if anyone can do it, it's us. Why? Because of, number 6, the optimism. The idea of the American dream is uniquely American. We don't care what your last name is, as long as you got a hard work ethic and flexible moral values. Or not, you could be a totally nice person and make it in America, but hey, the flexible morality kind of helps. There actually is some truth to the American dream. In America, the employment rate of immigrants versus people that were born here is actually higher. And in Europe, it's the opposite. So suck it, Europe. You're in a country where the wealthy families have been there for countless generations, or one with huge wealth inequality and high barriers to entry for businesses. If you don't come from a good family, you're gonna feel like your position is completely permanent. There is this unshakable optimism that is uniquely American. There's this attitude that if you want to start a business or make something of yourself and you work hard, you can do it. You can be something. And yeah, I'm sure there's statistics out there that show that social mobility in America is not what it used to be, or maybe it's even worse than other countries, but that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm saying is unique about America is that spirit, that optimism that you don't see in a lot of other places, which is completely infectious when you're there. And is the number 3 reason I miss it, right behind really good Mexican food and Target. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, especially if you like seeing videos like this and fun cooking videos that aren't super duper boring. They're great also for people who have very short attention spans. Let me know what you thought of the video. Please tell me what you thought. I really love to hear from you, so sound off in the comments section below. Well, that's about it for this week. Until next time, this is the Hungry Gringo signing off.